How's it going, y'all? Welcome back. The United States Grand Prix is coming up this weekend, and we are here to make our predictions for the United States Grand Prix here in 2023. Both championships might be wrapped up in terms of on-track action, but that's not going to stop us from making our predictions along the way to see if we can predict what's going to happen over the race weekend. This is going to be a big fun one. The United States Grand Prix at COTA is definitely one of the better, consistently better races on the calendar, and I'm hoping that this year is going to be no different. Our predictions that we're going to cover today are the same as always. We have our biggest positive surprise, our biggest disappointment, our qualifying top three. That's qualifying for the Grand Prix, not the sprint race, because it is in fact a sprint race weekend. We'll also make a prediction for sprint winner, and then our race podium, and then rounding it off here, we are Haas fans here, whether you are or not. When you're in this community, we are all Haas fans, and we'll make our Haas predictions for the race weekend. Before we get started, let me remind you, if you are an F1 fan, go ahead, hit that subscribe button down below, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload. And yeah, let's go ahead, let's jump on into it with our biggest positive surprise. Kicking things off with our biggest positive surprise. I don't think this is actually going to be a big surprise to many, but I think coming off of the back of the result we saw in Qatar this previous race weekend, I think Lewis Hamilton is going to come out and perform exceptionally well this weekend around the circuit of the Americas. Lewis always seems to perform well at the United States Grand Prix. Even last year, almost winning the race had the race, been a handful of laps shorter. So even in a W13 that wasn't particularly competitive, he definitely seems like he's been able to extract the maximum amount of race pace out of the W14. And I think they said they're bringing some upgrades that are going to make them not necessarily on Red Bull's pace, but put them in a bit more of a closer window. So time will tell on that front, but I think Lewis is going to come out and have a fantastic performance this weekend at the US Grand Prix. So Lewis, not that you need it, congratulations. You are my pick for biggest positive surprise. Moving on to biggest disappointment. And this one actually really does pain me to say it specifically because we know that he loves Texas and the United States Grand Prix probably more than most drivers on the grid. And that's Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel's coming off of obviously missing an extended period of time, injuring his hand at the Dutch Grand Prix, avoiding a collision with young Oscar Piastri, obviously leading to the shortened extent and stint in the car from Liam Lawson. But Daniel Ricciardo back in the AlphaTauri this weekend, and I'm sure he, as more than most, is going to be super excited to get out on track and do well this weekend. Unfortunately, I think the fact that it's a sprint weekend and it'll be the first time he's back in the car since injuring his hand with limited practice running, I just don't know if it's going to be as good as we all want it to be for him. And so, unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say, with limited practice time, a shortened practice periods because of the sprint race weekend, and an AlphaTauri that, while it is better, it definitely, I don't think, is enough to give him the result that he wants, or many of us would love to see him get. But unfortunately, Daniel, I'm so sorry. You're my pick for biggest disappointment. All right, we are moving right along. We are moving on to our qualifying top three. Now, this is the Grand Prix Sunday qualifying, not the sprint race qualifying. We do make a prediction for sprint winner, but this one we are talking about the Friday qualifying for the Grand Prix. And coming in at P3, I have gone for Oscar Piastri. I think the McLaren could definitely perform well around the Circuit of the Americas. Obviously, Circuit of the Americas is one track that challenges each car probably more than most. It necessitates top-end speed with that long back straight. It has high-speed corners, it has low-speed corners, and it is one of probably the best tracks on the calendar for testing the car in its entirety. And these cars that are going to be, single category merchants, I don't think are going to perform very well. But Oscar has been driving absolutely beautifully the last few weeks, and I think he continues it here on Friday. He's been on a great run of form, obviously winning the sprint race in Qatar, before also finishing P2 on the podium in Qatar. So I think Oscar continues on here at the Circuit of the Americas, and Oscar, you're my pick for P3 in qualifying. Don't mess it up. Moving on to P2, front row starts in the United States Grand Prix. I have gone for I don't think anybody's surprised. Lewis Hamilton. Now, Lewis's qualifying pace hasn't necessarily been, up to what we would expect from him. His race pace has definitely seemed to have outweighed his quality pace at this point. I think we saw this on most sprint weekends, I believe, having to see Lewis make up a lot of ground in the sprint race and the full race itself and end up finishing very, very high up the order. But I don't know. There's just a feeling about Lewis around Circuit of the Americas. We saw it last year. We could see it again this year, that who knows what could happen. I think Lewis is just going to come out. It's just a weird vibe in the air that Lewis is going to come out, perform very, very well. And I, for one, can't wait to see it. So, Lewis, you are my pick for P2 on the Friday qualifying. But then moving on to pole position. Pole position here around Circuit of the Americas. And this one actually is the least surprising, because I think it's the line of text on this document that I used to record my predictions that has changed to the absolute least so far this year since I started doing these predictions. And that is Max Verstappen taking pole position. A lot of teams are bringing upgrades this weekend. Mercedes, I mentioned earlier. I can't remember if Ferrari is bringing some, and even Haas are bringing upgrades. I don't know if Red Bull are bringing upgrades, if they fully committed to the 2024 car, but the RB19 in the hands of Max Verstappen is still absolutely just unstoppable. Even around Qatar and the Losail circuit last time out with the mandatory 18-lap stint max, we still saw him win by plenty of time, and with no longer a restriction like that, still at a high tire deg circuits. And that Red Bull just seems to take care of its tires more than anything I've ever seen. Max, yeah, congrats again. Another pole position. Yeah, I'm sure you'll be looking forward to it. So we move on to Saturday, the sprint race. The first time I think a sprint race at Circuit of the Americas. Obviously, it was not a sprint race on the calendar last year, and this is our first back-to-back sprint race weekends that we've seen since they started doing these a handful of years ago. But nonetheless, our prediction for sprint winner. Now, hear me out, right? We saw in Qatar. Close your eyes and envision it with me. We saw in Qatar Max not necessarily care as much about these sprint races. And we've seen that a little bit throughout the season as well. That I think Max much more, puts a lot more weight onto the full Sunday race rather than the sprint race. And so who knows what could happen in sprint quality. We saw that in Qatar as well with young Oscar Piastri taking sprint pole. Could we see something crazy happen in the sprint race? Only time will tell. But I've gone for Lando Norris. I think personally that Lando is it's smoldering deep down inside his gut that Oscar Piastri beat him to a race win in F1. Obviously being beaten by your F1 rookie teammate. Even though it was a sprint race, it is a race win on the Formula One calendar, and I think that's just going to be eating away at him, and I think he's going to be just busting to have a result like that. And I think he's going to come out and put it all on the line in the sprint race. He's going to put himself in good position from qualifying. I don't think Max is going to be, fight for it as hard because he knows the race is on Sunday. And I think Lando is going to do what he does best and try and win that race. And I think he does. I think Lando is going to match Oscar Piastri in a sprint race win this weekend. I think all of us would love to see it. The dude has been so close to a couple of very brilliant performances, but just has not been able to get over the hump. And maybe this is all the push he needs to really start fighting for race wins more, especially with the way McLaren has been developing the car this year. Lando, don't let me down. Count on you. Just similar to Lewis, there's just a vibe about Lando coming off of another weekend where he finished behind Oscar in both races. Obviously made the mistake in qualifying as well. Both qualifyings in Qatar. And so Lando is just, come on, let's see it. The takes online would be awesome. The fact that we would see Max not win every single race ever would be awesome. Let's see it. You are my pick for sprint winner. All right, moving on to the race podium. Sunday afternoon in the summer heat, fall heat of Austin, Texas. Circuit of the Americas, the podium predictions I have gone for P3. Lando Norris. I think Lando, coming off of a fantastic sprint Saturday, makes up for a less than stellar qualifying on Friday and finishes on the podium here in the United States for P3. P2, Lewis Hamilton. I think Lewis is going to give it his best shot in a hopefully improved Mercedes this weekend. And if the win is going to be there, I believe he will take it. But until we see it, this is the thing I say every single predictions video. Until we see it consistently, I can't do it. You already know what I'm talking about. P1, race winner of the United States Grand Prix, Max Verstappen. But I don't know. This could come down to very similarly to what we saw last year, Max having to chase Lewis down in the waning laps to take the win, Lewis finishing P2 then. I think we could see something very similar here, should it shake out that way. I think it would provide very exciting racing and very opportunistic moments for Lewis, and I think he'll want to take it more than anything. So Lewis, P2, Max Verstappen taking the win. Those are my predictions for the race podium this weekend. And then the final prediction we have for me is our Haas predictions of the race weekend. Obviously, it's the home race for the Haas F1 team. And while technically Miami and Vegas are also home races, it's the United States Grand Prix for the U.S. team on the grid. And they always seem to perform pretty well around Circuit of the Americas. Even last year, Kevin Magnussen scoring points with his last lap showdown with Sebastian Vettel. And so we got some hot predictions coming your way when it comes to Haas this weekend. I've already said 2 cars into Q2 in the full Grand Prix quali, 1 car into Q3 in the sprint quali. For whatever reason, Nico Hülkenberg is just a wizard at putting that car into Q3 at sprint race weekends. And so I'm counting on it again here. And then my final prediction, points this weekend. I said it. The Haas car has not gotten much better over the course of this year and slowly is falling down the pecking order. But I think there's a magic. There's a magic in the air. Haas, points this weekend. Make it happen. Sprint race, fine. Grand Prix, even better. Let's make it happen. Let's get some points on the board. Alfa Romeo came out hot with a double points finish last time out in Qatar, and they overtook us in the constructors' standings. Let's fight back. They're not that far ahead. 1 good solid weekend at home. Make it happen. I believe. Come on, get it together. Bring those upgrades. Let's make it happen. Come on. So that wraps up my predictions for this race weekend coming up. But if you're new here, we also like to give our community an opportunity to voice their opinions for the same predictions that I just made. And here we go. Starting with their biggest positive surprise, we have gotten also a shout for Lewis Hamilton. A lot of Lewis believers coming out of a tough weekend in Qatar. We also have a call for Daniel Ricciardo, P5. A Daniel believer, a Daniel enjoyer in the community, and they made their voice heard loud and clear. Moving on to biggest disappointment, we have a call for Sergio Perez finishing outside the points. Oh, Checo has had an absolutely dangerous last few weekends, and including a tough weekend in Qatar last time out. We've basically, I think, seen that Checo has gotten an ultimatum put his way by the Red Bull organization that says, hey, get it together or we could be looking elsewhere. And that would be tough to see. Checo once again finishing outside the points. That would be tough to see. And then we also have a call for Williams. I think Williams actually is going to perform very well. I actually went back and forth a lot about putting Williams as my biggest positive surprise. I think they're going to do very, very well. But we have maybe it's a reverse jinx situation, but we have a call for a Williams tough time out this weekend in the United States. Another home race for young Logan Sargent. Although I would consider the Miami race to be his home race, considering he is from Miami, but I digress. That one's tough to see. I think Williams will do all right, but some reverse jinxing going on out here. Moving on to Grand Prix qualifying results. P3, we have a split decision between both Mercedes, one for Hamilton, one for Russell. They really couldn't decide. George obviously had the leg up in Qatar over Lewis. It showed fantastic quality pace as well as race pace. Will he be able to keep it up? Who knows? Last year we saw him kind of take out Carlos Sainz into turn 1 and really never be able to make much ground from there on. So who knows what George has in store for us this year, but time will tell. And for P2 and P1, we actually have a consensus pick for P2 in Lando Norris. A very positive weekend of opinion for Lando. And then P1, Max Verstappen. I don't think that's too surprising to say the least. Moving on to sprint winner, we all have a choice of Max Verstappen. Obviously pretty safe. I don't think any of us would be too surprised to see Max take the win in the sprint. And then we also have a Lando Norris believer in the community as well. It would be lovely to see someone else beside Max win another race this year. And Lando seems to be the pick to do it if it's going to be anyone. Moving on to the podium results for P3, we have I'll do P3. P3, we have a choice for Oscar Piastri. Obviously, Oscar, like I mentioned, been doing very, very well. We have some pastry enjoyers. And then another pick for Max Verstappen. To be fair, this person has made it very clear that as the season has wound down, the championships wrapped up, the predictions are only going to get crazier. So Max Verstappen P3, which would be his worst result of the season, I'm pretty sure, which is crazy to say, but that's just the year we have in F1. P2, another consensus Lando Norris race podium. Lando seems pegged on that P2 spot, and it'll be interesting to see if he can ever get that top step. And then P1, we have a split decision between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. This basically goes off of what I said in my segments as well. It feels like one of those weekends where we could see a Verstappen-Hamilton clash once again here in the United States. I, for one, would love to see it, but only time will tell. And then their Haas predictions of the weekend. We have a P9, P13, trying to peg it dead on P9, P13. And we have another where a double Q2 appearance and then a P9, P14 in the Grand Prix. So we have some Haas believers as well. Haas, just for whatever reason, just seems to score points around Circuit of the Americas, and I, for one, hope they do. But that wraps up our predictions for this weekend's race at Circuit of the Americas. Are you looking forward to it? Let me know down below. And if you have any thoughts about the predictions that we made, let me know down there as well. I'm really looking forward to this weekend. I live in Texas, and so the United States Grand Prix, since I started following F1, has always been marked on the calendar for more ways than one, because yes, that is correct. I will be there. I will be there at the Circuit of the Americas this weekend to see all 3 days of action. We'll be driving up and taking in the sights. The only other Grand Prix we've ever been to was last year's race at COTA. We spontaneously got tickets to the race on Sunday, and this year we weren't going to miss it for the world. We're going to be there for all 3 days. And so if for somehow in some way you see me and you recognize me and want to say hi, feel free to do so. But I'm looking forward to being there. I'm going to record some content while I'm there, so keep an eye out for that after the race weekend is over. But for now, I think that's going to wrap it up for here. Once again, subscribe if you haven't already. Don't miss a single upload. And let me know what your thoughts are for the US Grand Prix this weekend down below. But that'll wrap it up for me here. Keep an eye out for after the race weekend is over for our race reaction, as well as the content that I recorded while we were there. But that's going to do it for me in this one, guys. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.